Good everything, everybody. Hello there, Dr. Gray Carr. How are you?
Hey, Professor Karen Hunter, I'm fine. How you doing?
I'm here. For us it's a Friday, so I usually click into very foolish mode, but then we're here. So I'm serious right now.
You
And
switch quickly. You did this morning beautifully. I mean, that was like so many levels. Actually, I want to freeze them 20, 30 minutes and just listen again and think. And what you did, listen, if y'all didn't hear, if y'all not yet subscribed to Sirius, you can go on the Karen Hunter show, Karen Hunter YouTube page and watch them few minutes where she was fast shadow with Mike Dyson. That was beautiful. At first, I thought it was a clip at the beginning where you kind of started with, "Why did you?" But then I realized, no, you just came in like that.
yeah,
Why you do that, man? Like that? He had no answer. He had to start prevaricating and posturing and
I
all
already
that.
talked. Full disclosure, we had talked about it off mic. So for me, I was like, I don't like to do stuff in the
Oh,
shadows. I don't. I'm not a
right.
person. I'm not going to talk behind your back and not say something in full view. I'm not
Yeah,
that person. So if I say
yeah,
it off mic, I'm gonna say it on mic. So be
yeah.
careful when you talk to me. But
Right. Right.
and not that I can't keep secrets or whatever. But I'm saying we had a conversation
But
off
that,
mic
that
about
wasn't
this
that. Yeah.
situation. But I was like, if we're gonna move on, let's have that conversation. And I even came in chuckling about it, like, haha. And then it just went left. And I wasn't expecting it. So it's not like I did that man any kind of way other than I was giving him an opportunity to address the foolishness. Because it was
Right.
foolish. I still think I stand by it. He may disagree, whatever.
I'm not sure that he does, because I'm not sure what his position was.
No, well, he said he would take the picture again. So I was like, okay, so you just
Well,
don't.
it's a mix of. Do you think it's a mix? He was trying to seem to me convey a mix of that. I'm not going to, um, I'm not going to abandon my humanity because somebody else has. But,
Your
but no, it
humanity
wasn't.
doesn't require a picture. So,
Well, but see, and therein, that's where the thing short circuited. Because this ain't about respecting humanity. Because the analogy that he gave didn't work, and then he pulled out disanalogous, which I was like, okay, this where we going.
yeah,
This,
and because you know me well enough, there were times if I wanted to body,
you could have edited him
I
as
was
an
like,
editor
it's
and
too
an
many,
English.
it's too
Right?
many
Don't do
things.
that.
But I let it. I
Don't
was
do
just like, let me just sit here. And then some people were like, oh, you came in, you were I was like, I don't care about
what?
all of that. Here's what I care about. We're in a particular time where we are literally fighting for our lives, our future, and all of this stuff. We ain't got time for the foolishness, except on Friday on the Karen Hunter show. We're gonna be foolish for one day because Black joy is always gonna be on the menu. But
That's
people who have people's ears and eyes and who are in positions with platforms and are being platformed have a responsibility to not be silent in the room, to not capitulate to the nonsense that's going on. And when people are actively playing in our faces, when these open white nationalists are playing in our faces, you don't put your arm around them and give them coverage. You don't
no.
let the world think that it's okay for what they're doing, because they do this though. But this is the game, and I think I kind of lifted the curtain a little bit because they do play in each other's faces. They go out to dinner and they dine, they take pictures, and they may even go out to dinner together and do all of these things, and then on camera is da 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 da. So we're engaging in cosplay when people's social security, their Medicaid, Medicare, like everything's
Come
on
on,
the line right now,
come
and
on.
we ain't got time for it. So I'm gonna be very transparent and black and white as far as that is concerned. And if you are my open enemy, I'm not kikiing. You're not gonna get my teeth. I'm not hugging. We're not doing any of
No,
that
no question.
today.
And then,
And
yeah,
that was my point.
no,
Maybe 10 years ago, we could have played the WWE of politics, which is what they're doing. They're still
right.
doing,
That's exactly right.
but
And
not
you
today. So
not today.
this goes out to Abby Phillip, Kiki, and with Scott Jennings having him on your show all the time. Like, stop
Well,
it. Stop.
I haven't watched. I don't think I've never watched a full show. I've probably watched maybe a cumulative, maybe 7 to 10 minutes, and even that I'm being generous. Probably closer to 3 to 5 minutes cumulative. I'll watch a few clips. I can't watch Smarm because he could end up the governor or Kentucky or senator because it's a white nationalist country. And I just see Abby Phillip as existing in a hostage situation.
No,
I
no,
mean,
no,
she's
no,
not a hostage.
no, 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 no. That's no. You have a responsibility. You sit there, and
Mm,
so you're contributing. And listen, I've lost so many jobs. So let me just say, somebody, there's a price to be paid. Okay,
that,
you
that,
know. So,
that would
so
be my question. If
I'm
she were to do the other thing, would she still be there?
if your way of eating means that our liberation is stalled or we're being more oppressed, then you need to figure out a new source of food.
I see. Well, then there it is. That's pretty stark. That's pretty
That
clean. I
I mean,
mean,
that's
Nancy
how I
Mace
see
has
it.
been who
Maybe I'm
she is.
being hyperbolic.
I respect Nancy Mace. She's a white nationalist. I mean, you know, if I were my brother Mike Dyson, I wouldn't go around LaMonica McIver anytime soon. I hope you don't run into her CBC weekend or something like that, because at that point now you got to, why you say you take this same picture and she up with her using a congressional committee to go after her ex no moral self, gonna say that this sister got to get out of Congress because we have to safeguard the public's faith in this institution. Nancy Mace has no character, no morals, and you would still take a picture with her. I think at that point he was just trying. I don't know what he was trying to do, but whatever it was,
Listen,
you weren't on the defensive. I don't even know that he was. I think he was just talking.
I
I'm not sure what Mike was doing. he had no good defense, because that would have required radical honesty, and that would have been, yeah, that would have been ugly. Because I don't know. It's all speculation. But
and I really personally don't care one way or the other. So just
well, no, but I do. I think this speaks to another question, though. I mean, and then this is the, what do you do in a situation where you have people's attention in a no attention span society? Abby Lincoln, God, I'm
ooh,
sorry.
don't do that.
I'm sorry, Mama. I'm sorry, Mama Abby Lincoln. Abby Phillip, which, you know, they clearly got this agenda on CNN, and she could walk away, but she'd have to. You on all these platforms, people they hear your name, they hear your voice, and they expect a certain standard, and you're going to maintain that standard.
I
You're not
mean,
going
but
to compromise.
it's not a standard to maintain. This is just how I, and I realized early on it was not popular or the
Mm,
norm. You know, I remember I got into a heated fight at the Daily News when Amadou Diallo was killed, and I was so naive. Like I thought, this is what's right. I stormed into my boss's office. We had a shouting match. I'm in tears. I'm so angry because I'm like, how I can't sit on this board and put this out. No, my name's not on it, but this is wrong. I'm like, this is
yes,
wrong. And
yes.
and finally my boss was like, this is the boss, the owner of the paper. This is his opinion. I was like, yeah, but we sit here
We sit
and
here.
you're signing off. Your name's on the masthead. Like it was nasty. And I could have lost my
Mm,
job that day. But I think in that moment, he was like, okay, this is wrong. Okay,
my,
you write 2 paragraphs. He let me write 2
oh,
paragraphs in that editorial. And then that
that's,
moment I realized, this was not even, I didn't think about it. Do you know what I'm saying? I wasn't like, oh, I could lose my job if I go in there and I fight for Amadou. I don't even know this man. But I said to him, could they shoot 19, 30 bullets in your neighborhood? You live
wow,
a
there
couple
it
of
is.
miles away, right? This was the Bronx. Could they do that? Would they do that in your neighborhood?
And his answer,
You could write 2 paragraphs in this.
well, there you go, because he know the answer.
Yeah. So, I
And
mean,
therein lies the difference in terms of the record of what got in and what doesn't.
in my mind, and maybe my mind is narrow, but I think if everybody stood up for what is right in the moment wherever they are, and they gather, their people, then it wouldn't be so lonely. Wouldn't have to be one voice. It was 100 voices. Malcolm showing up to the police station, it wasn't just him. He was
No,
backed by a lot of people, and it was a different outcome.
that's exactly
When you
right.
have your, as Shiloh Hendricks, your tribe up. She said,
Tribe,
tribe up. She said,
tribe,
tribe up. Okay.
uh, uh,
What does that look like over here? So
what does it look like? The
in
tribe up.
my mind, it looks like nobody's hungry in our community, nobody's unhoused in our community, and it looks like when injustice is happening, and if it's not happening to you, especially if it's not happening to you, you speak up
Right.
anyway.
That's right. You speak up anyway.
Especially those of us who can speak up.
Well,
So
that's the thing. And well, when you speak, though, a lot of other people are speaking. You're platforming people, which is why I appreciate you having him on, and not only him, but a lot of other people having them on.
I
He's
actually
not.
invited him on because I wanted to have him on regularly. So I don't think he's coming back. But I was like, oh, let me bring some thought leaders on that people respect or whatever, and let's have these conversations.
Oh,
About, I don't know whether we agree or disagree on topics, but we're both smart enough to kind of work them through, and people can listen to how that is. And it just got derailed. Maybe it's my fault. I'll receive that. But at the end of the day,
That's your fault.
we
You should
have
be able to explain. You should be able to explain why you did what you did.
you
But
should be able to. Yes.
people not ready for radical honesty. You could just say you didn't care that much.
Correct.
You could just say that you personally like the white girl. You could just say, I mean, but you can't say it. I mean, but you can't then write books and talk about radical truth to power and all that if you're not going.
Okay. All right. Are you on there? All right. All right. I
mean,
had that conversation all
I
day.
know we both know people of every imaginable racial background. We know people that we like as individuals, who like us as individuals. But I think you're absolutely right. In a moment of human crisis, planetary crisis, when you got somebody out here spewing purebred hatred. I grew up in the South. I know white people who, if I were to see them again today, 30, 40, 50 years after the last time I seen them, I expect that they would be wearing MAGA hats. And if I were to see them now, I'd be like, yeah, we was cool in the first grade, but I don't know you. I don't care. We played football together. Yeah, we was on the baseball team. Yeah, we laughed. We was in the band together. And now you MAGA. And the best thing I can do for you is not punch you in your face. Now I'm gonna be full-throated against you in this thing. And I damn sure ain't taking no pictures for old time's sake. I mean, it's very simple.
I mean, Lamar Odom.
Lamar Odom.
But again, it's
I'm
this
sorry,
man.
I should have interrupted you. Could you explain? Because some people don't know what you're talking about.
So Lamar Odom today, was it yesterday? He's met with Trump over this cryptocurrency, which is a wild grift. It's so crazy.
Wow,
And all I can see is poverty. All I can see is brokenness, and that you don't have a way of making a living or having a lifestyle the way you want. So you're willing to do anything. Willing to do anything. And what I love about this time, at least we know we can't have any excuses now.
Right.
Do what you do. Please do what you do. Do it loudly. Let us sit back. But then we have to then make some decisions about the people that we idolize or that we praise and put on pedestals or value as stars. They're telling us who they are. Jalen Hurts, they were like, why didn't you go to the White House? He said, well, I had a scheduling conflict.
No question.
And the people who went, they seem to have a good time.
Next question. Now, of course, if you ask him what the schedule conflict, if it was me, I'd probably say, well, I had a conflict. I had scheduled some time with my conscience. Ooh. So it was really, I mean, notice he never say what the scheduling conflict was. That's a perpetual scheduling conflict. See, I've always got right scheduled somewhere. So I had a scheduling conflict. I'm sorry. I mean, but that cat, man, he is just so smooth. It really makes me wish I could watch him play. But, at any rate, to the point that you're making, Lamar Odom, left-handed, smooth, University of Rhode Island. If he could have stayed in a different trajectory, maybe he's in the Basketball Hall of Fame. But we know him because he throws a ball in a hoop. That doesn't allow you to, Well,
a lot of people know him because he was married to a Kardashian.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But the reason he was married to a Kardashian is because he was throwing a ball in a hoop. If he had been Lamar Odom and had the hand herb hustling on the streets of LA, Kardashian, I think, is what are they, Armenian or?
Yes, well, half Armenian.
Half Armenian, I guess. Well, Kardashian may be Armenian for grift. I mean, so ain't no Kardashian marrying. No, if a Kardashian is interested in you, you have some form of public visibility, right? And shout out to Kim Kardashian, who just graduated from law school.
No, she didn't.
Exactly. Why don't y'all just take 5 minutes instead of repeating what you saw on social media, hanging out with a lawyer for 6 years, and then saying, I graduated from y'all be listening to these Kardashians anyway. But yeah, but Odom, hey man, we all living in the world. Do you? But understand that most people don't. Well, let me not say that because I haven't done a survey of most people. Too many people don't take the time. And apparently he caught all kind of heckles on his way into to
And
the
still
Trump national.
stood there with his little thumb up. I said,
Oh, I didn't see the video. He had his thumb
picture.
up.
Yeah, had his. I said,
My man, I ain't mad at him. I blame the shiny suit era. But anyway,
so,
if you
so
black, you going to jail.
who's the Lamar Odom fill in the blank of the 60s? Who was taking a picture with Bull Connor? Who from the black community? Was it somebody skinning and grinning with these folk?
Wow.
I know James Brown was, taking pictures with Nixon.
But black capitalism.
Yeah, but I don't see Nixon in the same boat as his, he might have been
he wasn't.
definitely MAGA adjacent. I mean, at least his social
No.
policies didn't help us. But yeah, he wasn't like this.
I'm trying to think. Who was that brother who was with George Wallace at the end? The brother, his
That's
kind
at
of
the
like.
end, because George Wallace had a come to Jesus moment.
Yeah, he
or
did.
something.
He did. But he was like an attendant to George Wallace. And I can't think of the guy's name. But I'm trying to think in the fifth, probably the closest, and even this isn't a good analogy. I can't think of any athletes, unless maybe Floyd Patterson at moments. Unfortunately, because he was apolitical, not because he took a side as much as he just didn't know. And he paid for it in 1974 in Zaire. George Foreman waving that American flag around in the ring in 68 in Mexico City while everybody was putting up fists and stuff. And George just so determined. And he took that ass whipping 6 years later for that from Ali. But I can't think. That's a great question.
Is this a new, because
No.
we've been conditioned to, this is how you make money, rubbing up against this nonsense.
Social media for sure, media publicity. William Hannibal Thomas, who wrote an interesting book, it's called The American Negro. William Hannibal Thomas was an anti-black Negro from the late 19th, early 20th century. There were African people who blamed eugenics. Unfortunately, some of them a little too comfortably close to people we idolized in the 1920s and 30s, who would say that, certain black people shouldn't be able to reproduce, but they think that for all races. And so it's kind of feeds that talented 10th mentality. Even as they were against anti-black racism, they still had a kind of classism that held sway. But being in bed with open racists.
Some would say maybe Booker T, but that's even further back.
Washington's not a bad example. I think Washington is where, Adolph Reed would write this years ago in his essay, What Are the Drums Saying, Booker, which was published in the Village Voice and then eventually got included in one of his anthologies, a couple of his anthologies. I think it may be in Stirrings in the Jug, but Class Notes it's in for sure. This was a popular essay where Adolph Reed, let's get hit a little too close to home because Dyson is mentioned in there. Reed, Adolph Reed puts this whole class of black public intellectuals in the 1980s and 90s. He says they are in the tradition of Booker Washington, because Booker Washington was in many ways the heir to Fred Douglass, who Reed, and I wouldn't disagree with this, would say was he says that Fred Douglass, and to a degree I think Sojourner Truth for sure, were the first platformed Black American representatives that weren't picked by Black people. So, I mean, Nat Turner and them are there, but that's only because they were such a threat that you want everybody to know, don't let anybody, but Sojourner Truth is speaking in front of white audiences. She names herself Isabella, names herself. Fred Douglass becomes platform because he's just really the representative thinker of the 19th century in many ways. He's so representative of Black possibility, even in these confines in the social structure, that you can't ignore him. And then he becomes the face of anti-slavery. And then when when Douglass dies in 1895, there are some who are emerging out of Wells, I. Garland Penn. That's why we talked about 4 years ago, at the Chicago World's Fair in 1895, when they published that pamphlet, Why the Negro Isn't Here. And then the Haitians said, come here, y'all can distribute out of our pavilion. Washington is literally curated by these white people. Samuel Armstrong at Hampton, then he's at Tuskegee, gonna build this Black institution. And these white Southerners trying to continue their process of reconciliation with the North and industrializing the South find in Washington a partner, because Washington says, we ain't got to do nothing with y'all culturally. I'm not going to fight y'all on Jim Crow or any of that politics, even as I'm secretly funding legal challenges.
Right.
I'm not going to be in your face with it.
Right.
And on this economic thing, I ain't trying to run your company. I'm trying to get us to buy some land, farm. We're going to send you all our cotton. And so at that cotton exposition in 1895, they literally say, this Negro is y'all's leader. And so what Reed says is, now you fast forward to the 1980s and 90s, every one of y'all, ain't none of y'all affiliated with Black institutions. All of y'all are on the documentaries. They come to you for the quotes for the TV. They put you on the panel. You're like Booker T. What? Black people didn't pick you, Henry Gates. Black people didn't pick you, Cornel West. Black people didn't pick you, Michael Dyson. It doesn't mean good, bad, or indifferent. But then finally, what he says is that creates a kind of two things. It creates an insular group, and each one of them will never betray the other one in the group. They say, this one's brilliant, this one's that, which is why when a new book comes out, the first thing I do is look at the blurbs, because I'm saying, are you part of the white people chose y'all? And like, there's a new book out on my friend Peniel Joseph down at the University of Texas. We were talking about it in studio. Came in, and then they said, oh, this is a new book. And I said, well, hold on, let me look at it. Let me see. Gates got a quote? Yeah. Keisha Blaine got a quote? Yeah. How'd you know that? I said, what are the drums saying? These are the translators. And that's why he named the article, What Are the Drums Saying, Booker? He said, like in them old Tarzan movies, here come the white man through Africa with all these black people carrying him. And then you hear these drums in the distance in them old black and white Tarzan movies, and the white man gets scared and he says, what are the drums saying? What are the drums saying? And then, oh, drums say that big water coming. That these people carrying you are translating what the natives are saying for the white man. He said, that's what Booker T. Washington did. He translated, this is what the Negro wants. The Negro needs to clean her hands and pray to Jesus and bust her ass, and that's all the Negro wants. Washington knew better. That's why he called him the Wizard of Tuskegee. But he knew if I translated this, Carnegie gonna cut me a check. It's very interesting. Anyway, so another brother who has had this same critique, which I think is very interesting because he's part of that crew, but not really in the same way, is Houston Baker. Houston Baker wrote a book called Betrayal about the Black intellectuals of the post-1960s. He's friends. He was the first Black president of the Modern Language Association, Houston Baker. Still around, retired now, was at Vanderbilt for years. Before that, University of Pennsylvania, went to Howard undergrad. Brilliant brother, great brother. And his thing is, he gets to the short hairs of it. He said, let me walk y'all through the intellectual trajectory of how this class of people got created, because I know them, I'm in them, they're my friends. I'm also very critical. It's a very even-handed critique, and it's devastating. He calls it a betrayal. He says people really are betrayed. So I think
that's how I feel, and I don't put Booker T in there.
I can't say I don't.
And in many ways, I think they don't know what to do with me because I've been in both worlds, like firmly, but always clear, very clear about what it is. When I think about Booker T, a person that was enslaved figured out something,
right,
to get resources for his people.
That's right.
So yeah, when you skinning and grinning, and there's works that Tuskegee still exists. We got the Airmen. We got Donald Richards.
We talking about it. I'm repping Tuskegee. No question.
Yeah, that's that man. So we can't call him a sellout. What did he sell out? Yeah, he might have been skinning and grinning. If you want skin and grin, damn it, bring home the bacon. Like, let us have something to show for it. Give us some land and some mules and stuff. Like, don't just be skinning and grinning for nothing or for just yourself, which is what this generation is about. It's self-aggrandizement.
This is a very, very important conversation we have. It is in so many ways. Tuskegee, so fascinating in that regard. My friend Brian Jones, who you talked with, Brian Jones up at the New York Public Library, who wrote the book on the Tuskegee student movement, which we've talked about here, of course. He says that generation, that Washington, Tuskegee, 1881, and it's there for generations before the Tuskegee Airmen. And then there's the medical hospital in Tuskegee, where you get Black doctors and Black nurses. Washington has created a space where the politics of Jane Crow and Jim Crow are there. Apartheid is there, but there's like disagreement. Y'all leave us alone, we leave y'all alone. Don't get involved in politics. And so they're training Black professionals.
Like Marcus Garvey. The
Garvey one, yes.
This is what I'm saying, Dr. Carr. Yes. We get so wrapped up in individual achievements that we don't look at the fruits. Like, I'm always, let me look at the fruit. What have you produced? I'll leave you alone if there's works. You won't hear my mouth. But if you've been around 10, 20 years and there ain't nothing to show for it other than some books and some stuff, I'm gonna have something to say about it. And I think we all should have something to say about it, because as we deify people, because we do deify people, and then we dare folk to challenge.
Yes.
Like, please make it make sense. At some point, it's not personal. Like at this point, if we're not looking at systems being built, if we're not looking at communities being built, if we're not looking at results in this time, and we have an opportunity, I've been saying this, we have an opportunity right now in the midst of this chaos and open, like there's no question what is happening. If you're still on that fence, if you're still trying to walk a tightrope in this time, I
mean, you're right. You're right. I put it. Often we hear the word nuance. We'll hear it's complicated. All of that's absolutely true. A moral stand, as you have said, an ethical stand, a moral stand, a stand on the side of right, incontrovertibly right. It comes at a cost in an oppressive society. Jacques Derrida wrote this many years ago, and I'll never forget, Derek Bell included it in his casebook, Race, Racism, and American Law, near the end of the casebook. And still waiting on this 7th edition to come out. I still use the 6th edition as one of the books in my class over at Howard Law. He says that protest, when you buck, when you say this is immoral, this is unethical, this is not right, he says that is what reveals the law. It is protest that reveals the law. Before that, if there is no protest, people assume this is the order of things and it can't be changed, and that's the way it should be. But protest reveals the law. You know what I'm saying?
And I disagree with there having to be a cost to it. If everybody could say, we all know right and wrong.
But see,
we all know it. So why y'all quiet? Why is there only one person out here gotta take the bricks? No, everybody should be like, no, this is wrong. You know what? This is wrong.
This is why it's so hard. Because when you say that, guess what? That is, you're against capitalism now. You're against democracy now. I'm saying, really, because when you Athenian democracy, absolutely. That's not radical equity. No, the rich and the landed make decisions. And so what we've been thinking, this is what makes what happened with Cyril Ramaphosa this week in South Africa. Yeah, it's what makes it so funny to me. South Africa bothers them because South Africa is the United States. And South Africa attracts us because South Africa is the United States. That is a multiracial democracy. And in some ways, it shows you the possibilities and the limits of the concept of democracy. You cannot have a democratic society where everybody eats unless you're in a predatory relationship with another democratic society or other societies that aren't democratic. It doesn't work that way. And in a democratic society, you're going to have radical hierarchy. In South Africa, about 10% of the people own between 86 to 90% of the resources. So when you see Cyril Ramaphosa is a millionaire. Cyril Ramaphosa led the negotiations to end apartheid. He's the one that Govan Mbeki, Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, all them, they picked him because he was the head of the trade union. He was the union guy. He's the one that negotiated the end of apartheid, not Mandela. They sent Cyril Ramaphosa in there. And once it was over, it was very clear that South Africa would need a managerial class. It would need a tiny black elite that could keep everything in order. And Cyril Ramaphosa was one. When we go to South Africa, I take students to South Africa all the time. First time I went in 2007. We go to Soweto. They got a row in that township, Southwest Township of Joburg, where Nelson Mandela, Winnie Mandela, what's his name, Bishop Tutu and them, they call the neighborhood that they moved to Hollywood. In other words, it's no different than Oprah and they're over, except they put more blood on the line because it was a time when they were all in the street, but they were in that street because apartheid had forced black people into this unity. That's why I always see here in the United States, the reason we had all these brilliant black lawyers and doctors who fought for us is because apartheid in the US forestalled class stratification. Once apartheid was over, the natural class stratification in a capitalist society began to occur. So a Karen Hunter is an anomaly. Why? Because you could pick to do something different. You're committing what Amilcar Cabral or Maulana Kareem will call class suicide. You don't have to do this. And so you expect these other Negroes to do like you doing. They're looking at you like, are you crazy?
Yes.
Society.
Yes.
You gotta go make this money.
Right.
And you know what the solution is for that? Then when they say, when you call them a sellout, they say, no, you just need to get on my level. And so prior to the minstrel age on steroids, which is the current contemporary, entertainment sports complex, it wouldn't have been athletes and entertainers. You know what I'm saying? Nat Cole made money, sure. Jack Robinson made money, but apartheid was still there. They're still represented, and they had different morals, and it made it easier to have those morals because you had those rules in place. Fast forward to now. The superstars who are Black simply can look back at the rest of the Black people and say, look, if you just sing hard enough, if you just practice on that jump shot long enough, you could come with me. And where we get mad at the Lamar Odoms in the world, I think this is part of it, not all of it, obviously, is because the way capitalism works, they did not get to where they're going the way that previous generations did under apartheid. Meaning what? You don't have to go to school. In fact, you shouldn't go to school. In fact, you just work on your running and jumping. And now you went from, I ain't got nothing, to I got these millions. So your sensibility is still rough around the edges. You're not coming into space with a calculating, or I went to this school, I thought about this, I've invested. No, you was playing ball. You got $50 million and now you here. So LeBron James can say, I'm gonna open a school. I'm gonna quietly invest in this. I'm gonna try to flip this. That is a new phenomenon in capitalism where it comes to Black people. Now, what do we do with that? I think one of the things we do is those of us who would commit class suicide have to understand that even when we're doing that, we are in a capitalist system, which would mean even the people who don't have the nominal resources people in that class have will look at them like, you're crazy. Why are you out here spending time with us? You need to be, if I was you, in fact, come teach. And the first thing, come teach me, come help me. Now, I need a hookup. Who do you know? Wait, no, that's not. Capitalism can't be reformed. This is what I'm saying. And that's fine.
All right. Because I've been thinking about this, especially now that I think we need to get back to being on the other side of the street and making sure that our communities, the dollar circulates, since we're going to be in this capitalist system.
Absolutely.
Jim Crow provided us with hotels and restaurants and businesses and rooming house. I mean, like there was a thriving class. We talked about Robert Church Sr.,
yes. Yes.
which to me is always kind of the blueprint of what that could look like now. And you think about Harlem and all of the things. And even in that time, the segregation of those folk led to cotton clubs and, maybe not the cotton club's not a good example, but, we had places to go and people to see and folk that even like Louis Armstrong had the means to do things, right?
Yes.
Because I don't know. Do we need an Elon Musk in our community? I say no. If there's somebody that's making that much money, and maybe I guess socialist.
You should say that.
No,
but that's the thing. I reject those labels. I mean, I remember a few years ago when you talked to Jared Ball. Jared has some very radical and very necessary and important ideas about how this society should be transformed. He also doesn't live them. So my thing is, the theory is great.
See, and I don't know what people are doing until they reveal it, right? Because I'm not on the.
Well, you could just see them.
Yeah.
This is why the whole academic class. That's why I said the university has to be jailbroken, because the very people writing about radical transformation are tenured college professors with good benefits. So when they start talking about voting for Jill Stein or the third or the fifth or the 15th party in communism, I just started laughing. I'm saying, because them people who are mopping the floor in the building where you doing the Zoom from with that salary need some health care. I'm laughing at y'all. I agree with you in theory. I will go page for page with you on the theory. But then we got to go home. And last time I checked, you got in the Uber. Did you ask that person who was not able to organize for collective bargaining because Kamala Harris's brother-in-law was sitting at Uber and said, we got to break this? you can't get where you're going by just talking about it and writing about it. Now you will get a nice book contract and you probably get a grant, but it's cognitive dissonance to me.
So in this space, because I look at this space, as I said from the beginning, as like we drop breadcrumbs, pick them up, make a sandwich, figure it out, find your lane, and the responsibility is on the people who are listening. As people are listening to this, whether they catch it today, Saturday, whenever, next year, what's the solution to this capitalism that you say cannot be reformed?
Can't be reformed. I think there's I think it comes in the form, well, let me say it this way. The solution comes from this conversation, the collective thinking that comes, that spark when we're talking. In other words, capitalism isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Democracy as a concept isn't going anywhere anytime soon. The way you bust them out and ultimately create something else is to be fully engaged. But it isn't enough to be fully engaged. After all, Lamar Odom got on a plane, a train, got in an automobile somewhere, and ended up in Northern Virginia last night with real millionaires, including that dude who was born in China, who ain't go to jail, who was getting prosecuted by the SEC until Trump won, who gave the most for the meme coins. So you're spending your time. The question is, how do you spend your time? So in a space like this, here we are, a space that didn't exist several years ago. And that means that because this space exists, and because we hold ourselves to a standard that we are constantly trying to elevate, and not just elevate, but maintain in a way that is as completely accessible as it can be to people who are willing to do the work, that will give birth to ways of thinking that a social structure would label radical. When we first came into this space, that you sat with all those skills and all those years of experience, grounded in a generosity of spirit and a true desire to see not only Black people win, but through the experience of African people, humanity bloom in a new age. The concept of narrative, and then the concept of Nubia. When we first came in, some of those earliest conversations were with practitioners, theoreticians who had begun to apply the theory, people with farmland who are doing farm to institution direct supply chain work as African people. So here we are, and those of you who are watching this on the YouTube side, which is why we keep that side there, because again, there are people without the resources. So, you know what? It's funny. Social structure formation would call that radical democracy. They're being radically democratic, rather than trying to turn a subscription platform into a cash cow. No, there's enough resources to maintain.
I'm not to interrupt you, but
no. This is great.
We disagree on this because I have witnessed people spend money on things that they value.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, when people get things for free, they don't necessarily value it as much.
But are they getting it for free though? Again,
so my thing is, if you have to pay for something, even if it's a nominal amount, you're voting with your dollars, right? And even if you don't have a lot of dollars, there are people without a lot of dollars that somehow their babies got Nikes. And I'm not judging. I'm just saying you're going to spend $100 on a child who will grow out of those Nikes in a year or maybe less time, because you value what those Nikes mean to you when you go out with that child with those Nikes on. So I'm saying, can we shift the way people? If you think this is something of value, you should pay for it. That's how I feel. But I'm always open to it. So you're like, if people they can't afford series, whatever. But I see people will afford what they care about. A Beyonce ticket, they will not pay their rent to go see Beyonce, and they can't do nothing with a Beyonce ticket after that concert is over.
So my question then is, why do they value that?
But this is why we had this. I see what you're saying. So we got to
we have to change the value. We're saying the same thing. Right. I don't really think we're not, because I mean the shoes make no sense.
Right. But I only came in. I agreed and I capitulated because I'm,
no, it's not capitulation. We're growing together because what I understand too is that we have to have resources. I have to have resources. You understand that in a way that you will put it into practice where I wouldn't. Because in my mind, I'm thinking I need money to pay the rent and buy books and keep my stuff where it won't get dispersed. That's not the thinking that would translate into a lot of material resources.
Correct.
And what I'm saying is that,
Let me just say one more thing.
yes, ma'am.
There was a lesson that you gave on Carter G. Woodson that to this day motivated me in this space. So what you see, because he died basically penniless.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, and you listed a bunch of these scholars that gave so much and then died penniless. And I think I said this to you. With my dying breath, I'm gonna make sure that doesn't happen to you.
Oh, God
right?
bless you.
No. And I'm saying that because you're not gonna look out for yourself, which is why I'm like, in community,
no,
we have to be that for each other. You see
what
I'm saying?
You know what? We should let's stay here for a minute, because to me, I am looking out for myself. In other words, it's so funny you say that. Okay. It's not possible. Yes, it is. It's still possible to get in trouble. This is the price we pay, right? We've both been in spaces where people have spoken, given academic papers, laid out beautiful visions, got awards, and we sitting there like, this is a joke, right? I just heard you say, and the food on this plate costs more than all the people serving it made together. Just the food on the plate on this table that costs $1,000 a seat, and I didn't pay for it, but some company or some university. No, I'm saying all that to say that I think about it. Yeah, because y'all. But my point is this: what do you value? For me, taking care of myself means now. Hey, aren't you supposed to be up there speaking? Yeah, I'll be there in a minute. Why? Because I just found out that this dude that put the microphones up, he's from Nashville. So we started talking. Now he's looking at this. This is what I value. I won't leave this hotel.
I know.
I had the conversation I came here to have. Now I know because y'all paid for the plane, I got to come up here. And so when I'm talking about that, and I see y'all, everybody clapping, and yeah. You know, the people who really understand that, the people who really understand it are the ones that took y'all keys and parked y'all cars.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? But I know you in here because this is, and you mean well. This isn't a criticism, like you said. I'm not being critical. What I'm saying is what I value, what we value the same thing. Right. You know how to put material resources in place so that what we all value can continue to be valued. So now,
and we don't have to beg anybody for anything.
We don't have to beg anybody.
And there are things that need to get done. You know, I think about Schomburg. I think about you.
Mm-hmm.
I think about Schomburg. I think about you.
Absolutely.
And those things don't just happen, right?
No,
and then we look at people during the election cycle getting money from, we took no money. We got no money. They didn't offer Urban View any money. They $1 billion. We didn't get, and I'm salty about it because I'm like, damn, this is the one audience that can help you get elected because they're gonna be out there canvassing. But you didn't value this audience because that's what money does. Money tells you where people place their value, right? So as folk, we need to let the world know what we value. I value you, which is why I value you. It wasn't a single time, those could sitting there with the calculations. When YouTube started, because I wasn't even on YouTube like that.
No.
And you can make money on YouTube. The first thing I did was
here. Some money.
You were like, no. And I'm like, yes.
This money.
And yeah,
And that's why I could buy a book without thinking twice.
But I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying this to say that if your energy brings something in that brings money in, then we need to, like we're in a capitalist society that is bolstered by the taking advantage of people's goodness, right?
Yes.
And not giving them anything for it, right?
Yes.
And so in each exchange, I just had a guy from another country do some work, and I said, how much? And he gave me a price, and I gave him double that because that's what the white boy would have charged me. So if I'm gonna pay you, I'm gonna pay you what the white boy would have asked me for, and you don't know your value. But I'm telling you, because I live in this place and I know what the white boy has charged me, I'm gonna pay you that. And he couldn't believe it. But I'm saying that if we don't practice the kind of shift in the marketplace, now is it capitalism? Yeah, we just supply and demand. Yes, but I'm gonna pay him what he's worth, not what I can get away with paying him, because that to me is an exchange of energy too. Because I value you.
It is.
And so I'm just saying we have to raise the bar on how we value one another, even in
No,
those exchanges, right?
I agree. We just had that conversation in Texas last week with my brother-in-law, my sister, my niece and nephew, and all the people in their community. You know, it's a multiracial community, but it's a lot of Black people. So they all came over for Eden's graduation party, and they all sitting there talking. And they were talking. And when we pulled up, there was this brother, Spanish-speaking cat, got his truck. He talking to my brother-in-law about cutting the grass. And so my first question was, you don't cut the grass? Because I wouldn't let nobody cut my grass. If I, you know what I'm saying, I would cut the grass because it's meditation for me. I've been cutting the grass.
All right.
More. You know what I'm saying? But that's not criticism. I'm just saying I was kind of joking. But then that led to, well, what do y'all pay? I'm asking, of course, it's children, adults, elders, women, men, people all around. But invariably, as the rhythms move and flow, at some point, somebody crack a beer, and you know, I'm not, I hate beer, nasty to me. But I'm sitting here, and here come the brothers. Now they all sitting around. Now I'm sitting there with them. I met all these old heads, 5%ers from New York. They done moved to Houston, so we all sitting there talking about Rakim, and it's great. We sitting around, and I said, so what y'all pay these cats, man, to cut y'all grass? So they started telling me, and I'm like, y'all pay them more than that? And I realized, I said, okay, these dudes are precariously perched. Some of them many of them perhaps ain't got no papers. They're living in maybe the worst white supremacist state in the union. So that's taking advantage, don't you? And so we started talking about, my point is that what you said, you gotta give them, you got to give them more. And so, and to their credit, I know every last one of them brothers and sisters pay these folk more than the white boys do. But I also know that the people who come, in terms of what they value, they absolutely value that dollar because it allows them to exist. But the other things they value, like family and community, means that what they do get goes farther than everybody, all of us who were sitting there. The value proposition. What is currency? What is a dollar? It's a marker for value. And what is value? Value is reducible to time spent. How do you spend your time? Energy. Time is the only constant.
That's right.
You know, so when the ancient Egyptians used the word mer and put that hieroglyph for love, it translates in English as love, but you have to see the picture. The drawing is of a backhoe. In other words, to love is to work. You spent your time working for this. I love you. I heard what you said. I heard how I feel in my heart. But what did you do with your time to demonstrate the concept of love? Currency is a marker for value. It isn't value.
It's not.
So I gave you $100. Okay, what did you do with the $100? What is that? What did that buy? Did it buy some time for you? Did that free you up so you can do? What is the purpose of life? The Egyptians would say the purpose of life is enjoyment. The Yoruba would say is to work on your character and to understand. So ultimately, we work so we can have our time. And the joy is when we can work at something which is where we would spend our time. People say, I would do this for free. You're never doing it for free. Your value is in the time. You didn't spend your time because time can't be bought or sold. Time is. Is your time clear to be? Being time. So Lamar Odom, you get into this crypto, why? Because I want to bow out the time of my family. I don't want my mama to every athlete is like, I'm not just doing this for me.
I don't know if that's why he's doing it.
Obviously. Well, yeah, you're right. I'm using him as a marker for, generally speaking, the attitude which is always critiqued in a Western sense, because Western society, for them, that doesn't make any sense. That's why we don't need no Elon Musks. In other words, the idea is that Allen Iverson got a contract and 50 people are at his house.
That's right.
No, these the people. The money is a marker for value. Do you understand? I don't give a damn about
I had the pleasure to we were working on a book project to spend time with him. And Baba Chuck is somebody that loves people.
No question. And that's why they love him in Philadelphia. He
loves people.
If he got $1, you got $1. I mean,
that's right. That's right.
And see, what do you value?
Biggest hearted man I've ever met.
And I'm sure y'all click like this because that's your spirit.
Yeah.
Anybody with a spirit like that, it's like we ain't even really got to talk about this no more. Now, but that does mean that when you have someone for whom that's not their spirit, you have to guard it, which you excellent at doing. And when you have somebody for whom that is their spirit, but they're so far off the other side, like I am, you say, well, we got to watch you because you be out here in these streets with nothing. And then we got, but I mean, I think about that. That's why I know none of these people, none of these fascists like Russell Vogt or none of them, you're not Christians.
Yeah.
Because Jesus Christ didn't have nothing.
Look, okay, you're on this fancy camera. I had nothing to do with the camera, y'all. Carr, you did that on your own.
I'm holding. Courtney told me what to do when I saw her.
Wait, who told you to get that camera?
Me.
Okay.
Because I wanted to be, you know, I started moving my hands. I got it now.
Okay.
Thank you, Courtney. Yes, thank you. Because that, yeah, I saw Courtney and shout out to Dr. Wilson. I saw her on what was that? Monday. I came back from Texas. Monday night at the 100th anniversary celebration of Malcolm X, his birthday, 100th birthday anniversary. So beautiful for you to have Baba Peter Bailey in conversation. That elder.
I'm sorry. I keep popping and popping.
No, you're not. It's not popping. Come on, talk to us, because that's important. Peter Bailey been living on this earth for 87 years, and I
didn't know him. And then I saw Kevin Powell reached out. He said, you know, Monday, because Dr. Black was scheduled for Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Powell said, can I come on your show to talk about Malcolm? And I said, sure. Can I invite a couple of people? I said, sure. Peter Bailey, Pearl Cleave, and Yuri Koshiyama's daughter, Audie, who does not do interviews because she doesn't like, she doesn't like all of that, right?
Right.
So she was super nervous. And I was like, yes. So I got to sit in a space that I would not have ever had the opportunity. Maybe I would have, but I couldn't have imagined these three people on my show at one time. And I wouldn't have been able to even navigate because I don't know enough. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know. I haven't spent enough time with them. And so it was a discovery for me. And I'm just grateful, first of all, that we had the platform to be able to do it, but also that Kevin had the confidence to reach out, because apparently I'm generous with my time, so he knew he could do that. But to have him kind of, program the 3 hours it was fantastic. He's got a Newsweek piece with Spike Lee on the cover. He has a cover piece on Malcolm X, the movie, and Spike Lee talking about it. But it was really for the audience. I don't know if y'all appreciate it, but Monday's show was just phenomenal. Peter Bailey, and then you got to sit with him that night.
Oh, yeah, I know Peter Bailey a long time. Yeah, Peter Bailey. In fact, we talked about it. Y'all want to go in the archive, go to session 62 and session 136. 62 and 136 is where we talk about Yuri Koshiyama, who, of course, for his birthday,
Same day.
Malcolm X's, and who was there, of course, when he was assassinated. And we talk about Peter Bailey. We talked about Peter Bailey so much. So 62 and 136 for Koshiyama. Let me look in the bibliography, because this only goes up through August.
And I know we talked about Pearl Cleave because we talked about her dad too. So
absolutely, yes. That's right, Barbara. And it's here, but it'll keep. See, that's the beautiful thing about it. And here we go. In 166, we have Peter Bailey. That's his latest book, Brother Malcolm's Strategic Pan-Africanism. Peter Bailey was the editor, of course, of Blacklash, which was the newsletter of the Organization of Afro-American Unity. He actually reproduces in that book the copies of the newsletters, so you can get that book. Now now that's a person, and I think I may have said this to you before. He needs a publisher, because he'll keep everything.
We actually talked, but what's also fascinating, it was Malcolm that basically made him do that.
That's right.
Like that's another responsibility that we have.
That's exactly right.
Somebody, even if it's not their thing. I get the feedback again. But
my bad.
Yeah, that's all right. We have to push people into their greatness sometimes. And Malcolm told him to do that, and he did. And he answered.
Yeah, and it changed his whole life. Like you say, after Malcolm was assassinated, he worked for many years for Ebony. He worked with his friend Hoyt Fuller at Black World, Negro Digest. You want to hear more about Peter Bailey in terms of our conversations, like say 166, we talk about his latest book. But then going further, he wrote a memoir, his first book around this, called Witnessing Brother Malcolm X, the Master Teacher, a memoir. That was 2013, Lumina Press, which is what he names his press. That was in session 62, session 79, and session 89. So you can see an extensive conversation where we talk about him. And then, of course, in this year and years, and so he's here in DC. He's always at Sankofa, so just a beautiful moment. And we were all there Shout out to Positive Black Folks in Action, which is his organization. I don't think I have the program here. Let me stop before I start waving my hands around again. I don't know what I did with it. But at any rate, just a beautiful, beautiful convening. And Courtney showed me how to work. It told me how to work this camera. So thank you, sis. I appreciate you. And I just did that to get a better quality picture. But yeah, this question of value. Again, this idea, when we start talking about where we are as the people, the human beings on this planet who all breathe the same, walk, talk the same, have the same challenges, whether it be health, whether it be our heart, our brain, our gut, all those things, the people. What does it mean to then have people in formations, governance formations, who are people to each other? And then broader social structures that knit together the small communities, the people gathered under the Texas sun for an 18-year-old's walk into college, like I was with my niece. All of us, that's a governance formation, that community. But then it connects to other communities. And then the polity, Polity, as we talked about when we read from that recent book by John Ma, Polity, on the Greeks, and compared it to the Egyptians when we then took it to, not Toby Wilkerson, Brian Kemp. Not Brian Kemp. It'll come to my mind. Barry Kemp. Barry Kemp's book on ancient Egypt, where there wasn't a concept of citizenship, but there was a polity. How do you bring people together beyond their neighborhoods, beyond their communities? That's what a social structure is. And so we talk about that. People look different depending on who they are in relation to other people. That's the roots of what we would now call countries or even nations. People call them nations. And the state, the concept of the state, and we've talked about this many, many times, the state is simply a delivery system for interests, human interests, people's interests. When we talk about the people, you have white nationalists like Nancy Mace. You have white nationalists like, you fill it in, these propagandists, who will talk about the American people. The American people elected Donald Trump to do this, and that's why we're doing. No, the American, ain't no such thing as the American people. There are people who live on the landmass that you call United States of America. But to be an American people, you would have to include everybody, and you are a minority of the people. I'm not talking about a minority of the people who voted, although you are certainly a minority of those, as Greg Palast has said to you many times, of the people who walked into a voting booth or attempted to cast a vote. You are the minority. Through voter suppression, you're pretending to be the majority. And even if we were just to accept that, it is by such a slim margin that when you say the American people, you clearly don't mean everyone. Certainly your budget doesn't mean everyone, but the people don't exist. But you use that, the people, as if it's a thing. It's not a thing. It's just human beings who are walking around together for this stretch of time that we cannot create more of. You're born, you die. You can eat right and exercise and pray that extends your time, but ultimately it ain't your time. It's time. We are born into time. We don't shape time. Time shapes us. And so that is the ultimate value. How do you spend that time? Wherever we came from before the time that we call the time of our quote unquote physical lives, natural lives, and wherever we go back to, if it's just to the earth, it's still time. We still exist in time. We came at a time, we exist in time, we will continue in time. Times of and the state is just a delivery system for interests that people, that human beings, that creatures have during that time. That's what the state is. And in the contemporary world system we have, there's a brand new book that just came out, Capitalism and Its Critics, A History from the Industrial Revolution to AI by John Cassidy. John Cassidy is a staff writer to New Yorker. Now here's the book, Capitalism and Its Critics. John Cassidy, we'll wave it around, unless that doggone, I think it only responds to my fingers, so the book won't change it. But, just thinking about that today, Lamont and I interviewed someone, it'll go next week, Damon Young, the writer. And, I wasn't enthusiastic about it. It was a good conversation. Lamont did most of the talking because this new book's coming out as an anthology with Black people writing in a humorous vein, talking about humor. And so that's cool. That's Lamont, you take the lead on this because my questions might not be good in this format. So y'all should talk about that. But one of the things that kind of formed in my mind was the idea of how culture is passed across time and space. In our African studies framework, that is the movement and memory category. How are things passed? How do people remember from generation to generation to generation? And so I did ask the good brother, Damon Young, how would you look at Black comedy today compared to previous generations? The Black Power movement, the 1970s, where some of the things that are so funny continue to resonate with us today. He said, that's a good question. I haven't really thought about that. He said, I started to say, I just had to get back to you on that. But then he started talking about the accessibility, really what I would call the science and technology that enables more people to be out there. Whereas before there was more gatekeeping, there were more narrow paths. You didn't see everybody. So Sidney Poitier and Bill Cosby could make these films with all this humor that resonated with Black people that continue to endure to this day. You come forward to 2025 and everybody with a phone with a camera on it to press record can make their movie and upload it. So therefore that those days aren't coming back. So okay, that's good, but it didn't get at the heart of what I was coming into, which is really to consider the context, the social structure out of which Africans are creating cultural meaning making, and has that impacted our ways of knowing. I mentioned to him, of course, because he's written about this. One of the authors in his anthology writes about this, the question of Richard Pryor going to Africa and coming back, so he ain't gonna use the N-word anymore. And of course that didn't last. However, the severe decline in him using the N-word came in part from him saying, I'm over here, this is where people came from. I didn't see no niggas. No, you didn't. Now, the other side of that is that Africans who have been thoroughly colonized will look at Africans in the United States and say, for example, in West Africa, the bandied about word akata. Yeah, I don't have no culture. Of course we have culture. There's cultural meaning making, but movement and memory may be different, may not be different, but it is something we have to talk about. So we talk about the people versus the state and what's going on with us today. We are being punished collectively for cultural reasons and demographic reasons. Number one, Black people is a demographic. That is the way that many white nationalists look at Black people. You know anything about us? You don't know our culture. You don't know our cultures, how those cultures interact with each other. You don't care about it. All you know is that we are Black, and that's what allows you to be white, to borrow from James Baldwin. But when we talk about a state, a delivery system for interest, capital is the main interest in the contemporary world system because it is a capitalist world system. Democracy, in many ways, is in a symbiotic relationship with capitalism. So we say democracy, we're talking about the state formation that allows capitalism to do what it does. And capital, with currency, the marker for value, which is reducible to time spent, is a battle over time. So, this bill that has been pushed through the House of Representatives and may be pushed through the Senate shortly, where they say, well, Trump said he was going to not let taxes not let people who make their living off tips be taxed. That's a good thing. How does that benefit the elite? Okay. So now your taxes aren't tipped. Your tips aren't taxed. Yeah. See? Do you make enough money to pay taxes? Huh? Yeah. You get that FICA, you get that Social Security taken out, but do you make enough money to pay taxes? Okay, you do? Great. You have health care? Wait, where did your food stamps go? Where's the aid for families with dependent children? Okay, you trying to work your way through school? Your Pell Grant got cut? Okay, so would you rather have taxes on your tips and a nominal form of health care and some form of tuition assistance in forms of grants, Pell Grants, or none of that and your taxes and there's no taxes on your tips? You gotta be smart. States are a delivery system for capital. All that refund check ain't nobody gonna get because it's now Elon Musk's pocket for the Golden Dome that they put billions in the budget of the Pentagon for. Yeah, to understand that the state is a marker for capital, and capital is distributed based on people's capacity to wield the state as an instrument. And if you're not organized, then you don't have the numbers necessary to force, in a quote unquote democracy, the people to take your money and give it back to you in the form of things that you need to live. What is the state? Living. The savage reduction in social programs bespeaks valuing orders of lives. This is what the people who are in control of the delivery system value by what they reduce and what they spend on. Our power lies in redirecting our time. If we can redirect our time, then we can do something to change the society. Protest reveals law. God bless Reverend Barber, Reverend Theo Harris. Liz Theo Harris and William Barber, repairs of the breach, Moral Mondays, they're coming here to DC again. That's all very important. The more people do that, the more they have to pay attention. They'll still vote the way they vote if not enough pay attention. And guess what? The phone calls will shake them a little bit, but you know what will really shake them? Not just the phone calls, not just the protests, not just the town halls. What will shake them is when y'all all register to vote. Here come the white nationalists. We're going to vote you. Go ahead. I want all the white nationalists to vote, and I want everybody else to register to vote. And guess what? The white nationalists will lose most of the time. They'll lose all the time in the South. Gary Chambers been preaching this from the rooftops, and William Barber a decade before, back in 2014, when I was advisor for the NAACP chapter at Howard, and I got on a bus with them as their advisor and drove down. First time I met William Barber on the steps of the State House in Raleigh, North Carolina in 2014. So I'm very clear that the more people participate in the political process, the more you get to a post-capitalist society. It's not going to be easy. And that's not going to be the last thing, because there's going to be a crisis even in electoral politics, a crisis in democracy. My radical friends, many of them are well-resourced, will tell you that that crisis has to come by the collapse of the system, by withdrawing your support. I get it in theory. It makes a lot of sense. My question is, when have you missed the check? You haven't? So this is still all theory. I understand. And you're willing to miss all your checks. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, so am I. But what I'm not going to do is run out here in the street today. And guess what? Is that a coward's response? Probably not. But then again, I can't be sure. And maybe there will come a day when I am ready. We're moving closer to that moment now. Perhaps they're right. We will see. In the United States, it's a federalist representation. It's a federalist formation. Federalism. The polities are state, local, and federal. Well, the state attorneys generals who are pushing back now, I saw Roland posted on Black Star Network, they had a press conference this week. Tish James, Keith Ellison, many, maybe about 12 or 13 attorneys general, many Black people. Very good. Saw the good brother Kwame Raoul out of Illinois. They suing the S out of this administration. What are they doing? They are testing the limits of the law. Because Donald Trump is the face, the clown makeup face of this. But believe me, he is not an outlier. He's accelerating the inevitable implosion of a racial capitalist democratic formation that is unsustainable, because it is built on the idea of exclusion, not inclusion. The rhetoric of inclusion, however, creates enough points of entry that in many ways, the rhetoric of inclusion created the seeds for the destruction of the polity that spews the rhetoric of inclusion. Nobody wanted African people to be citizens in enough of a critical mass to make that happen. There had to be a civil war with 600,000 people dead. There had to be a civil war with 189,000 African people in the formal army and navy, 10,000 in the navy, 179,000 in the army. And that's not counting everybody else like Harriet Tubman who weren't allowed to enlist. It had to end up in death and destruction. But guess what? From 1861 to 65, there were no nuclear weapons. There were no attack helicopters. There were no rapid fire guns. If that happened again today, it would be a whole lot more than over 500,000 people died. It would be uncalculable, the number of people who would die. But we live in a federal arrangement in the United States. And as these state attorneys general go to the judiciary to sue, they are revealing the law. Lawsuits in that context are a form of protest. Absolutely. And what are they protesting? They're protesting a government that has been captured by people who told you what they were going to do. We're not going to rehearse this big old telephone book. But one of the reasons we had McKay Coppin on this week on Sirius to talk was because when I read his article on Trump 2.0 and Russell Vogt, somebody we've talked about many times, I thought it was a unique opportunity to continue to draw a bead on the individuals who represent the small groups of people who have captured the state. Russell Vogt, who wrote Chapter 2, The Common Defense. I'm sorry, Chapter 2, Section 1, Chapter 2. See Russ Vogt? Executive Office of the President of the United States, page 43 of Project 2025. mandate for leadership, it's important to understand what Russell Vogt was talking about. He's the quarterback of Project 2025. Him and Kevin Roberts. We're not going to go through this again, chapter and verse. You can go back and look, and I got my eye on the clock. Vogt writes in its opening words, Article 2 of the United States Constitution makes it abundantly clear that the executive power shall be vested in the President of the United States of America. You know how he reads that? He basically reads that like the President of the United States is the king. He the king of Article 1. Anything on Article, king of Article 2. Article 1 is the legislature. That should tell you what those criminals, those fleeing felons, those human traffickers who wrote beautiful words and did not live them, Madison, Jefferson, all them, you know the people, George Washington, your friends. Because, by the way, the reason we say nation state, the state is the delivery system. The nation is the concept that gets people to buy into the state. Nation from the Latin naci, meaning to be born, meaning a common sense of culture, a common sense of values, a common language, the United States is not a nation. It's a state with a lot of different nations in it. And it relies on myth making like George Washington's your father. He is not. He's a human trafficker. And I would like to believe that somebody in our convenings would have been trying to poison him because he was a human trafficker, and they would have fought for by any means necessary to acquire their freedom. But I understand why you love him. I find myself when I read James Madison thinking this is a brilliant guy. At the same time, he had my people captive. And then evil women killed his granddaddy. So guess what? I shed not a tear for James Madison's grandfather because he shouldn't have brought those women from West Africa in the first place. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that Russell Vogt believes in that. He's a true believer. He's a Christian nationalist. Not only is he a Christian nationalist, as McKay writes, McKay Coppin, in his article, Trump 2.0, and about this guy, Russell Vogt, who believes that Article 2, the executive branch has the power, the president has the power to do whatever the hell he wants, and can't nobody tell him they can't do anything in that branch, he can just do. Well, this man, while other people saying, you shouldn't call us Christian nationalists, we're not Christian nationalists. No, Russell Vogt said, yes, I am a Christian nationalist. He went to Christian schools growing up, devout, they say devout. It's like Ross Dohat in the damn New York Times platforming junior varsity Vance every 2 weeks. New York Times is completely and utterly without credibility. You keep giving this nationalist space, but Russell Vogt, hey, I am a Christian nationalist, a narrow Christian nationalist. It's a fascist form of religion. I won't call them Christians. I just call them religious fascists. That's what they are, religious extremists. Because to call them Christian fascists is almost oxymoronic. If you're talking about Christianity as the philosophy and opinions and beliefs that are stemming from the gospel of Jesus Christ, who last I checked never paid a mortgage, didn't own a home. And if he busted up at some of these mega churches and said, can I sleep here tonight? They called the police on him. The point is that you're not a Christian. You're a religious fascist. You're a religious nut. And I would put Russell Vogt in that area, but he wants to destroy any concept of separation of church and state. And his theory, which is the theory of the unitary executive, the expansive concept, basically the president as a king or a queen. And to his concept, Trump is the delivery system for that. So attack the funders who would fund any political action against you. Terrorize those who speak out. Because the Heritage Foundation has moved on. The front page of day before yesterday's last week's New York Times had a long article about something called Project Esther. They want to criminalize anybody who speaks out in support of Palestine and make that equivalent to anti-Semitism. It is not. Guess who some of the biggest anti-Semites are, meaning anti-Jewish, meaning anti-Zion, who some of the biggest ones are the religious fanatics who say the only reason we support y'all is because it's a means to the end, because the rapture coming and we got to use you as the delivery system for where we're going. They are the ones you should be terrified of, and many of them are in now the federal government, and they saying they're going to criminalize anybody who says free Palestine. Okay, you're going to jail. Trying to collapse higher education. Now, we already knew. This is why the commercial news mass media cannot be looked at as a credible source only for information. You learn facts from them, but their interpretation is very nearly worthless. They're trying to stay in business, and they scared of Trump too. So yes, the headlines yesterday, last night, the headlines today, Donald Trump has stripped Harvard of his ability to admit international students. No, he hasn't. Bozo has vomited from his perch in public housing, known as 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the White House. Bozo has said through his mouthpieces, particularly doggone Kristi Noem at Department of Homeland Security and Pam Blondie over at Attorney General's office, he has said, and Russell Vogt would say, see, you got to read what I wrote. The Attorney General ain't no separate branch. It's part of the executive. So it ain't got to have no distance between him and the White House. You can do whatever you want. You can use it as your attack dog. You can do whatever you want. Supreme Court kind of said, yeah, he can last year, if you remember. But now they're the ones who said, Noam especially, okay, Harvard, you got to stop admitting international students. You know what Harvard said? Less than 24 hours later, COA, and I ain't going to see you in court. We done gone to court. Friday, May 23rd. Thursday, May 22nd that evening, doggone Kristi Noem told Harvard, you can't admit international students. Depressed, Trump blocks, Trump tells her, nah, he can't do, because guess what? Harvard, you think they hadn't already started writing a brief? Not even 24 hours later, Friday, May 23rd, 2025, Harvard sued. And guess what? Before Friday afternoon, before the late Friday afternoon, early Friday afternoon, Judge Allison Burroughs in Massachusetts blocked the implementation, issued a temporary restraining order. Harvard still admitting international students. But that was designed to scare people. But if it's the people versus the state, you got to make a decision. You want to compromise? You want to confront? You want to contain? You want to control, try to control? All these are the options if you can get enough people organized. So the clown says, you can't do it. I'm suing you. The judge said, no, stop until we hear it on the merits. Andrew DeSantis destroyed the new college in Florida, changed its whole philosophy, and then stacked the board at Florida Agricultural and Mechanical, the pride and joy not only of Florida, but one of the pride and joys of our HBCUs and universities generally in the United States of America, and had them compliant Negroes by a vote of 8-4 put in somebody who shouldn't be nowhere near the presidency of Florida A&M, thinking that somehow he won. Well, guess what? The alumni, the friends and family of Florida A&M, my colleague at Howard, I saw Kadisha Grant on the call, raising her voice, former vice president of student body when she was an undergrad at Florida A&M. I think the president of student body that year was a young brother named Andrew Gillum. They already organizing. You think them rattlers, you don't know nothing about Florida A&M. You think they're going to take this L. Because whoever they done stuck on the highest of 7 hills going to blow away like the driftwood. She kind of looks like, actually. But the point is this. The resistance has to be consistent, and it has to swell, and it has to grow, because it reveals the limits of people to keep you oppressed. We'd still be in slavery if we hadn't resisted. South Africa, the president of South Africa came here this week, Cyril Ramaphosa. It's interesting to see this. In the mass news media, the commercial news media, commercial entertainment news media, ambush, ambush, ambush. He was ambushed. He was ambushed. Cyril Ramaphosa is a millionaire. Cyril Ramaphosa is part of that tiny black elite in South Africa that it develops like any other elite in a capitalist society, a democracy, to manage everybody else, which is why they got all those tensions in South Africa, because the vast majority of people don't have anything. There are even a handful of poor whites in South Africa. And so what you see then, Ramaphosa, however, is calm and cool. He didn't stare down as close to a devil in human form as you can see in the 20th century when he negotiated the end of apartheid. You want to talk about Afrikaners? I ain't talking about them dusty farmers they brought over here, or would-be farmers. Them 49, 59, however many, don't matter. I'm talking about pick both of them. I'm talking about the South African Defense Forces that slaughtered black people for decades. I'm talking about PW both. I'm talking about all them people who was on the wrong side of history, who realized they kept counting and realized they can't stop it. We threw Mandela in jail for most of his life, and they kept coming. We killed Steve Biko, they kept coming. The damn teenagers out here talking about they ain't gonna speak no Afrikaans. They overwhelming us. Please, please, Mandela will let you out if you're negotiating. You ain't gonna let me out till you let out Walter Sisulu and Amakatrada, until you let out Govan Mbeki. Yeah, you gonna let my people out first. Oliver Tambo, we got him out of the country before you could do anything. Go back and look at in class. We talked about all these things, so I'm not going to rehearse the history of South Africa. In fact, I keep the compendium pulled up. So let me just put in right quick, just quick, TAMBO. I'm doing the search. So go to session 671, the African National Congress Youth League. We talk about the ANC Youth League. That's one description. Tambo, yeah, 71. Session 71 is going to be the best one. You can also go to session 75. Let me go here. What is the time? Yeah, this is the period when we talk about the earthquake in Haiti. And then, of course, we haven't updated the bibliography yet to encompass the South African elections. I'll come back to that in a second, because in the White House, in the Oval Office, while President Ramaphosa is maintaining his cool and smiling and clowning Trump, he brought in Ernie Els and the other dude, the PGA guys, the Afrikaners, the white boys from South Africa, to tell him, hey, man, you need to do business. He brought in his Minister of Agriculture, Steinhausen, who was with the Democratic Alliance, who ran against him for president. He brought him in to plead to him. What was the mission? Not to kiss Donald Trump's ass. The mission was to reopen dialogue to get the trade going again. And guess what? The clown is going to reopen trade. He's going to reopen trade with all of them. The tariffs are going to go away. Why? Because guess what? We talk about the people who buy the toilet paper, the people who go into Walmart, the price is going up, and Walmart is like, we ain't gonna just lie about it. Now you want us to eat the tariffs? Oh, you scared now, huh, clown? No problem. Well, all of that is going to create a constituency of people who also live in this country who will push back, even racists among them pushing back. But when you saw President Ramaphosa come there, he gonna maintain his cool. He talked to the real racists. Y'all ain't fake racist. Y'all play racist compared to what he had to deal with in 1994, in 1993 and 4 and 5. Y'all play racist. But guess what? He came in there. You know, we started talking about golf. You told me to take up golf, so I'm taking up golf. You should come to the G20. We can play more golf. I brought a couple of champion golfers. Ernie, talk to him. Yes, you should come to South Africa, because South Africa, and he's looking there because he's an idiot. And the president of South Africa just smiling. Then he shows a video of Julius Malema, who the first time I took students to Howard, from Howard to South Africa in 2007, was still in the same ANC Youth League. I just encourage people to look at in session 71. The same one Walter Sisulu and, well, the same one Nelson Mandela was in, Oliver Tambo was in, Anton Mbeki was in, what's my man, Robert Sobukwe. They were all in the ANC's Youth League. Well, guess who was in a later iteration of the Youth League? Julius Malema. But they put Julius Malema out of the ANC. Ideological conflict. Malema's like, you got to give some stuff to these people. We should take all this land from these farmers and these boers and take these banks back and nationalize everything. Mandela used to talk like that. And then they had the Freedom Charter in 1955, where the Communist Party was involved, the trade unions were involved, the blacks and the coloreds and the whites were involved. They try to say it's going to be a multiracial democracy. It's still what they teach in the schools in South Africa, the Freedom Charter. But then there's another strain that says one settler, one bullet. There's a strain that says kill the Boer. Guess what? You think Rolahahla, you think Madiba, you think Nelson Mandela didn't know that song? There are videos of him singing the song with that little move, kill the Boer, kill the Boer. There are some people say, I don't want to kill the Boer physically. I want to kill the Boer mentally. I'm one of them people, because Boer became a marker for white supremacy, settler colonialism. It's the British too. And Elon Musk will tell you, oh, my people are Pennsylvania Dutch and British. Fine. The mentality of the Boer, the architects of apartheid, those people hanging out at Stellenbosch where they used to teach in Afrikaans and all that. Stellenbosch University, that is. And I've been on that campus to understand this is the brain trust of apartheid. It's the Afrikaner mentality, although the British are just as guilty. But it's Jan van Riebeeck in 1652 and the Dutch East India Company coming down there. And their mentality, they're here to stay. They are like the pilgrims in the United States. They combine the pilgrims with the British and the French and the Dutch and everybody else. And so while that gets combined in the United States, it's manifest destiny going from East Coast to West Coast. In South Africa, it's called the Great Trek. And they didn't take away none of the monuments when the blacks took over. All the monuments still there. I've paid respect to many of them. The Voortrekker Monument outside Pretoria, the monuments in Cape Town, the monuments all over the country. They didn't take them down. They didn't, quote unquote, sanitize the history. Here, they want to sanitize your history. In South Africa, they didn't. There's a lot of comparisons that can be made. When Ramaphosa came here, the clown showed a video. I know that guy well. I know Julius Malema. He lives quite well in Sandton. At least he did when we were there, and I've been there many times. Like I said, okay, you talking about the people need all this, and you got a nice house and a driver, and I understand you need to be able to sleep and eat and think and get to Parliament and protest. All that, I get it. I understand. It's very important, but I also understand you've done well while doing good. There's so many contradictions. In fact, I had a student who's a lawyer now, practicing lawyer. She went off to Georgetown after she graduated from Howard. She was in that first cohort of students we took to South Africa. Maybe not the first. Maybe the second or third cohort, because I think Josh Myers and Chigozie Onyema was in that cohort. She wrote Jahan Shahid. Jahan wrote her paper on BEE, Black Economic Empowerment. He would say that's the South African version of affirmative action, except it had a lot more teeth in it. Because in the South African Constitution, they have equity written into the Constitution. Women, racial minorities, language minorities. Guess what? The Afrikaners are a racial minority and a language minority. You know, one of their biggest concerns is they're worried about losing their language. They're worried about losing their culture. You ever see that movie with Morgan Freeman and Matt Damon, the rugby team, what have been in Invictus or whatever? Yeah, Afrikaners on that rugby team. Rugby, the sport of the whites. And understand that there's a cultural dimension they're worried about losing. Economically, most of them doing okay. 10% of the people own 86% of the stuff in South Africa, and most of the people in that 10% are white, and they got a sliver of blacks to keep everything else kind of managing. And Jahan wrote her paper on BEE, which was a way to get more blacks into the middle class, which is capitalist speak for the manager class. And so now they're coming to the University of Cape Town. Now they're coming to the University of Witwatersrand and the University of Joburg. Now they're coming to even the University of Stellenbosch and Rhodes University, KwaZulu-Natal, University of Western Cape already colored, but now more people coming. Why? You need universities as a way to get them into the middle class. But once these first generations show up, they say, hey, we got to do something for everybody. And these fees are too damn high. And take these damn statues down. Roads must fall. Fees must fall. We talked about all that. When you start letting them first and second generation people into college, they're looking at college not as a way for them to escape the community, but to get skills to come back and help the community. And that contradiction, the tensions of colleges remains real, very real to this day. There are a lot of comparisons to be made. Then the clown wheels in. They give him a stack of damn papers that then took off the copy machine. And he's waving at them, talking about mass graves. No, you know the irony in that? The irony of that is that he's got these white crosses, those weren't graves, and then they're showing atrocities and they're showing people being hurt and harmed. Those people were in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The ironies abound. The clown don't know what he's doing. He just waving stuff. You know, Bozo don't know what he's doing. Elon Musk, who never stopped looking at Ramaphosa because he wants Starlink in South Africa. But South Africa got rules, which means you ain't gonna bust in here with a white supremacist. This ain't the South Africa you grew up in, fella. You and your PayPal mafia, Peter Thiel and all them. This ain't the South Africa y'all grew up in. You at least gonna cut off a little slice for this Negro elite and this colored elite to join you. And we might ask you for a little bit more than that, even as they were relaxing the rules for Starlink to come before they had the meeting that captured all the headlines as an ambush, ambush, ambush. No, pay a little bit more attention. And so Musk is staring because he know what he want. But guess what? Ramaphosa is open to that. This guy capitalist. He's also a freedom fighter. It was. And he's in a society where that looks enough like the United States. In other words, a middle class and an upper class to manage the overwhelming majority of people. You didn't have any economic transfer to speak of. What does that look like? Looks like the United States, a radically unequal society in South Africa, except it's majority black. And they got a challenge. And then you're going to show some atrocities and say, look, death, death, death. And you talking about Congo. But you know the irony in that? Here's a final irony. I'm going to kind of begin to tie some things together and wind this up for today. Congolese senators just voted this week to lift the immunity of the former president, Joseph Kabila, whose daddy led a revolt from the East, whose daddy claimed to be, you know, in league with the spirit of Patrice Lumumba, who he knew. But Joseph Kabila, the son who ended up the president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, they just lifted his immunity in the Senate in Congo, not the Senate of the United States, because they're probably going to show up to be cowards and pass this bill. The Senate in Congo voted 88-5 with 3 abstentions to lift immunities for the former president because they're accusing him, the justice minister, not a stooge like the American Attorney General, Pam Bondi. I know it's no L. I know it's Bondi, but I prefer Bondi. After all, disrespect is also a form of clarity, depending on the context. You disrespect us, why the hell should we respect you? Language is important. The justice minister in Congo last month asked the military courts to investigate the former president for alleged direct involvement with the M23 rebels that are tearing up Eastern Congo. They got the rule of law in Congo, at least in that regard. So the irony is in South Africa, the irony of the clown is you waving papers from a country that's doing more to call a president to justice than this country did. And then you showing a video of somebody talking about get out, get the land from them, Malema, and saying kill the Boer. And the irony is they did no such thing in South Africa. Every time we go to South Africa, we see how much this system is looking like the United States. And we see the radical folks like Patrick Bond, who was at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, who wrote a book first time we were there called Talk Left, Walk Right, about Thabo Mbeki, and how they talk rah-rah, but they also are moving in the neoliberal direction that looks like the United States of America. But there are moments, like when they hosted the World Conference Against Racism in 2001, like when they took Israel to the International Court of Justice, where you will see South Africa behave very differently than the United States. They mad at South Africa because South Africa won't lay down, and because South Africa is enough like the United States that you don't want them to get no ideas, and you don't want nobody here to get no ideas. You know, it's interesting. And then Ramaphosa, the millionaire, the president of South Africa, the former freedom fighter, Cyril Ramaphosa, looks at Trump after he's finished ranting and gives him the clown line of the meeting. I'm sorry, I don't have a plane to give you. In other words, you bribe ass. And what does the clown say? If you did, I'd take it. How does the white press turn that into this guy got beat up? Cyril Ramaphosa ain't sweat. I'm sorry, I don't have a plane to give you, you fool. I'm sorry, I can't bribe you appropriately. Like my friends in the Middle East. I'm sorry, I don't have a plane to give you. This is the same South Africa. The vice president, it was in France with Macron, the vice president of South Africa, while people watching what happened in the Oval Office in that public housing. South Africa is still in the BRICS, not only with Brazil, Russia, India, and China, but dozens of other countries who are in or wanting to get in. More than half the people in the world are living in countries that are already in the BRICS. You think they putting all their eggs in this basket? We're here to negotiate. We need you to have our, and then Trump, they're killing the whites. If they were killing the whites, my friend, my agriculture minister wouldn't be here. This is the guy who ran against me for president. He's from the Democratic Alliance. And guess what? The Afrikaners have a political party too, the New Patriotic Front in South Africa. They are registered. They participated in the elections. Ask them, quote unquote, farmers that came to the United States whether or not they were registered to vote and whether they didn't participate. They're a minority. They can't win. Here, they're going to find out. They're going to have to get some jobs in a minute. That firm pushback wasn't necessary in the rhetorical sense because South Africa is keeping all their options open. And the jackals can't do anything about it. The head start and advantage, however. What's the head start? Oh, I'm looking at the clock. What's the head start and advantage that whiteness has had? And can we overcome it, the rest of the world? Howard French's book, Born in Blackness, is so important in this regard. Europe created itself and then rolled African people into modernity. Now, the question is the species of humanity going to survive modernity? It will require rebalancing. China is poising to rebalance. For the first time, BYD, the electric car vehicles in China, the sales in Europe last month outpaced Tesla. And guess what? They're going to keep outpacing them and keep outpacing. I was joking with my brother-in-law when we were in Texas. Say, man, we need to get some, we're going to have some BYDs riding around on the streets in Texas soon. Maybe not next year or the year after, but soon. And after that, it ain't never going back. Now the clown, now Bozo is trying to threaten Trump, threaten Apple with 25% tariff. You got to make all your iPhones in America. He talking crazy. That world ain't never coming back. It's about to be renegotiated. And the question is that renegotiation, what does that mean for us? What does that mean? The vast majority of the people in the world who don't own any stock in that, who are not in control of a government like in China, where the state capture means they control the corporations. The vast majority of people will suffer regardless of who's in charge. In South Africa, in Nigeria, they want Starlink. Why? It's reliable internet. And guess what? If you break off a little bit to the petty bourgeois class in Nigeria and South Africa, the rest of the people will say, well, damn, they ain't shit. And I'm going to text about it and I'm going to put it on social media with this phone that now works because the satellites belong to an open racist, but he's in collusion with the black elite through the black economic empowerment and everything else, the equivalent of that now in South Africa. Capitalism can't be reformed. It can, however, be overwhelmed if enough people get involved. You can't allow this to go uncontested. At some point, it's going to require compromise. At some point, it's going to require confrontation. But the ultimate goal of controlling this system, at least to the degree that it can be controlled, and ultimately reforming systems, can't be achieved unless we are fully engaged. It's how we spend our time like we're spending it today. So, you know, you can't win a capitalism game. Death's coming to all of us now or later. How do you use the time while you're here? And what do you value? The fear-driven racists, Dr. Kevin Roberts, Project 2025, Mr. Russell Vogt, they want a theocracy in the United States. It's a fool's errand and a fever dream, and you can't do it. The numbers won't let you do it. 330 million people not going to bow down to your lie of a concept of God, your white nationalist God. Ask the people in Oklahoma, the Oklahoma statewide charter school board, who got bad news this week. Isidore of Seville versus Drummond. That's a Supreme Court case, the 4-4 tie, that said you can't use public dollars for your Catholic school. It would have been the first religious charter school in the United States because they want to get rid of the separation of church and state. That is the fever dream of the white nationalists. Proud, by the way, loves the label, proud white national Russell Vogt. Now over to Office of Management and Budget, writer of Chapter 2 and Part 1 of Project 2025, and a thoroughly convicted white nationalist extremist, religious extremist. Well, guess what? The Supreme Court tied 4-4, meaning the law stood from the lower court. You can't do it. Yet, Amy Coney Barrett recused herself because she was in bed with some of these people who were running that charter school. She's entangled with them, so she did the ethical thing. Good job. And guess what? The punk who's over the Board of Education in Oklahoma said, don't worry, we're coming back and we'll get a case where she's not entangled and we'll overturn it. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. The Democrats and the Republicans are the same. Here's your chance to stop it. You can flip the Senate even. You can certainly flip the House of Representatives. The last 8 people to die while in office, 7 members of the House of Representatives and 1 member of the Senate, that would be Dianne Feinstein, right? The one that Adam Schiff took her spot in California. The last 8 members of Congress to die have been Democrats. 215 to 214, they passed this bill. Then they counted the numbers. They knew the numbers. Who knows if any of them hadn't died? The cat from Virginia or Sylvester Turner out of Texas, or the guy, Drivelda out west, I think Arizona. They were the last 3 to die. Had they not died, maybe the numbers would have been different and maybe that bill wouldn't have passed the House of Representatives. But the point is this, you can't keep letting people serve till they die. But guess what? That's the Democratic Party. Now, you're a shield for, I'm a shield for black people like hell. Which means right now the delivery system that will get us closer to some form of control, which means require some form of compromise in a 2-party system that ain't going nowhere sometime soon, is probably Democrats. So you got to do a better job with that. And sometimes in Democrats, God bless Sylvester Turner, will be a powerful ancestor, but you died in office. And that was after Sheila Jackson Lee, who was in front of that 8, died in office. You can't be doing that. Eddie Bernice Johnson said, I got to get somebody in here. I've been in here a long time. I'm on my way to make a transition. But, so let me get this Jasmine Crockett up in here. She's in the Texas legislature. And guess what? Good handoff. Good job. But this is a clash of ways of knowing at this point, to use another one of our categories. Extreme Eurocentrism, this Opus Dei business that has entangled people like Sam Alito on the Supreme Court, which is extreme Roman Catholicism. That ain't the Catholics. That's the extremists. So the great irony is that South Africa didn't do the thing you're accusing them of doing. If they had, the country would look very different, and you would have tried to take them out completely. The masses remain poor in South Africa. They didn't tear down none of those monuments. So it's Memorial Day weekend. If y'all want to go back and look at that, you can look. We talked about Decoration Day, the roots of Memorial Day. I'm going to kind of look at this. Something about 5 more minutes to be done. Let me see. Let's see if we can find Decoration Day. It might have been after Decoration Day. There we go. Session 64. A beautiful conversation we had. We saw the children's book illustrated by the great ancestor Floyd Cooper, now ancestor. We know that this is the season when we think about those who gave their last full measure of devotion. We know that Decoration Day stems from an African ritual performed in 1865 at a place where soldiers were buried, black and white, and the Africans of Charleston, South Carolina, reburied them with a form of respect and a ritual of remembrance that ended up emptying into a ritual that was recognized and became one of the foundations for what we now call Memorial Day. So we remember all those folks now. And as we remember those folks, we understand that we can take a moment this weekend to reflect. I know for me, that, I've started writing and outlining some things. I'm going to teach a new class in the fall at Howard called The Black University. We've jailbroken the Black University. And as you all have heard me say on the Nubia side here, that I want to maybe offer that class here because I want us to understand where these HBCUs came from, what the possibilities and limits have been, are, and will be in the future, Not because we're trying to replicate them here. We are absolutely not, but because we understand that while they're on the periphery of the community, they are connected to the community. And so that's what I've been working on now, even as we saw the courts. What did they do this week? Just announced it. 1,400 jobs at the education department restored. But we told y'all that's what's going to happen. This is Steve Bannon. Just throw all that BS up in the air, scare the hell out of them, and hope they hope they concede in the advance. Do not. The 1,400 jobs are back. Now they're going to get them later. Who knows? But the point is, the court stopped it. They took out the article. I don't think I have it here. And this is a case that it just came down yesterday. So I've been reading it. The sister who was on the National Labor Relations Board, the court ruled in Trump versus Gwen A. Wilcox et al. That they could do that. In fact, this is the one I'm looking at now. Here it is: Trump versus Gwen Wilcox et al. There were two women, the National Labor Relations Board and the Merit Systems Protection Board. Remember, Trump took them off. Well, yes, the Supreme Court on Thursday said it was okay because executive branch has that authority. This is the Trump is king argument that Russell Vogt loves so much. You can do what you want, even though the courts have ruled that there must be cause. So you took them off of these executive branch commissions, these executive branch boards, but there should be cause. That's how the courts have ruled. Well, guess what? The dissent, which isn't very long, it's about, let me see, there it is, Elena Kagan. Her dissent is about 8 pages long, not quite 8 pages. I would encourage people to read the dissent that came down on the 22nd of May on Thursday. She writes, and of course, Sotomayor and Kagan Jackson, Ketanji Onyeka Brown Jackson joined. She wrote, for 90 years, Humphrey's Executive versus United States has stood as a precedent of this court. And not just any precedent. Humphreys undergirds a significant feature of American governance, bipartisan administrative bodies carrying out expertise-based functions with a measure of independence from presidential control. That doesn't include the Library of Congress, because that's the Library of Congress. This man out here doing stuff that's clearly illegal because Vogt then told him he a king, and he's going to act like it until he is stopped. You must be confronted. She goes on and says the two such agencies involved in this application are the National Labor Relations Board and Merit Systems Protection Board, but there are many others. Among them, the Federal Communications Commission. That's the same FCC. They trying to bully CBS and bully ABC into doing what they want. And ABC and CBS and them, Viacom and them, and Redstone, Summer Redstone, them, they trying to say they're going to compromise. Do not compromise with these people. The Federal Trade Commission, the Federal Reserve Board. Congress created them all, though at different times, out of one basic vision. It thought that in certain spheres of government, a group of knowledgeable people from both parties, none of whom a president could remove without cause, would make decisions likely to advance the long-term public goal. She goes on, but guess what they said in the majority opinion? They said, nope, he fired y'all. Y'all will not be reinstated. You still go to court to test the underlying assumption that he could fire y'all. We'll still consider that question. And now the money of the court watchers is they're going to say that he can do it. But what they said is we're not going to reinstate you while you're appealing. But guess what? They carved out an exception, friends. This is what tell you the law is not real. Do you know the exception they carved out of these agencies? They carved out Hank Paulson. They carved out the Federal Reserve. But wait a minute. So it's okay for the FTC. It's okay for the FCC. It's okay for the National Labor Relations Board and the Merit System, but not the Federal Reserve. You know what they said? Well, the Federal Reserve is kind of public-private. Now because the case that is on point is the case that Kagan led with Humphrey's Executive versus United States. The case that's on point says that you have to have cause. All of this will be determined. Sometimes you compromise, sometimes you confront. All the time you're trying to contain and reduce harm. And ultimately what you want is control. But that's going to require a concept of the people that's a little bit deeper than what your favorite team is and whether or not you vibing with somebody because all the alphas or you went to Tennessee State or Howard. It's going to take some direct involvement and engagement. And I think that's the path forward. When we get engaged, I trust that we will come up with the kind of solutions and which levers to push in with that.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
At some point, I would love to talk with a few South Africans have come into the chat that says
Oh, have they?
Ramaphosa, not our chat, YouTube chat, Ramaphosa. A few South Africans. I don't know if the H, because we phonetically the PH makes an F sound, but maybe in
So they say Ramaphosa, not Rama, but Ramaphosa.
Ramaphosa.
Yeah, like
Is it
PHR,
Is
like.
it all right,
Well,
we'll figure it out. Okay.
You know what? It's interesting. It's interesting you say that because, and this is a moment in media list. You don't go anywhere. We're done. But since that meeting, I immediately went to the South African broadcasting company. SABC has got its own kind of conservatism, but when you like Ramaphosa had almost, or Ramaphosa, if you want to say Ramaphosa, had like most of an hour news conference after the meeting. So I'm watching SABC, which is free. You can go on YouTube, watch SABC. And so I hear them, you know, and then of course you go on the internet and see all kind of other video. But I like SABC because they're pretty conventional, and I can trust they're gonna be more corporate. So if they say it, it's got to be safe.
Right. Okay. And also the way they said he was a little soft. They let Trump. Anyway, it's weird to watch.
He was soft.
Yeah. Yeah. I was
him.
And I didn't know. So I appreciate you giving us the background, because a lot of these geopolitical machinations are being fed to us a certain kind of way for a purpose. You know, even is it Traore? Is it Traore?
Yeah, Traore, Ibrahim Traore. Yeah.
So I was thinking about, we were having a little conversation off mic, you and I, and I can't get the image of Patrice Lumumba being chased through that field with one shoe.
My God.
One shoe. He gets off the plane with one shoe, and he's visibly beaten, and then they capture him. And I think about Nkrumah, and I think about Gaddafi.
Yes.
And so while people gain control of their land and their power, and they have their people behind them, and you know, we just celebrated the 100th anniversary of the birth of Malcolm X. While people can be righteous and right, doesn't stop horrible people from stopping them. So that's when, you know, right? That's when they're most. So I'm concerned. Let me just say, because while Ghana, all of Africa's behind this man, and you know, they're trying to paint him as a terrorist, you know, and I was like, oh, here they go.
Yes. Yes.
You know, hold up these pictures of genocide, talking about genocide.
It's a lie. It's like those nuns in Congo when they tried to do the same thing to Lumumba after Eisenhower put the hit on him. And we haven't forgotten. In fact, we should probably, maybe we can get a Nubian refill and finally do that next week. We're talking office hours. Yeah. And then so we can watch the movie. Spies in the Congo is a very good book on this, because when the Lumumba was executed just about 20 miles, I think, from the uranium mine where they got all the uranium for the bombs they dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That whole thing was about resources.
Even that.
Yes.
Dr. Carr, even that. This country dropped 2 nuclear bombs.
Yeah, they did.
On a nation, on towns of civilians. So what I'm saying is, I don't think we have, you and I, or the people who are, you know, rocking with us, have the capacity to even understand the depth of depravity that we're confronted with if we even look like we're about to win. So we have to bake in some things.
There it is. That's why you're right. This is where it comes. Sometimes you confront, other times you compromise. But what we can always do, what we're doing right now, we don't take this for granted. We can study, we can work together and think. The Federalist Society didn't make its move until it had built its infrastructure. They had all the billionaires. Russell Vaught didn't just show up.
That's right.
You know, so you're absolutely right, Prof. We assume there's a level beyond which they won't go. One of the blessings of this moment is they are stripping all illusions. So now people say, well, I can't afford it. Now we have to fight. Carla Hayden, you think she didn't prepare for that? They went to court and stopped Trump from putting his person over there to replace her, because he wanted to get the copyright office and all that information and data and give it to it. Well, guess what? Her deputy is still the acting librarian of Congress, and they're in court. So I'm saying, we got all the people out here, all you lawyers, Langston, all y'all getting ready to graduate. Listen, this is why you go to law school.
That's right.
I'm not a revolutionary. No, but you're a lawyer. so you can file an injunction. I mean, you're absolutely right, Prof. No, this is why I get in these extremists, these absolutists. We got to walk away. We need no. There will come a time, and you walk away. We're going to stay here. We continue to talk. All the levers, all of them. This is the place. Oh,
Ashe.
Ashe.
Right.
Well, I know you got to go do the thing.
I'll see some. I got to do the thing. I'll see some of y'all in 30 minutes.
Love you all.
Love you too. Bye, Dr. Carr.